Welcome to another episode of Iced Tea. On today's episode, I am talking with sideline reporter for the Carolina Hurricanes, Hanna Yates. You can catch her on FanDuel Sports Network. She talks to us about her extensive career in the media, as well as who on the team brings more luggage to away games than she does, and her prized possession that has to be with her at every single game. Iced Tea is a production of Mix 101.5 and presented by Lane & Associates Family Dentistry, where every patient is treated like family. Well, I am so excited that you're joining me. I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous to ask you because I know you're so busy, but I'm like, you're so sweet and everyone loves you. And I'm like, she's going to come in and do this.
Kind.
So thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for, partaking in some of our iced tea. So you're our first guest that wanted unsweetened, which I am with you. Sweet tea is it's a little too sweet for me.
It can just be too much sometimes. I don't mind it on occasion, but it just depends on the type.
And we are, transplants here to the South. You know what I mean? You are from Missouri?
Yeah, from
originally.
St. Louis.
I'm from New Hampshire. So listen, maybe someday our taste buds will warm up to it. But until then, I'm good with the unsweet. Okay, there's so much I want to ask. But first and foremost, I always start off by asking people, what does your home game day look like? Start to finish, morning to night.
Yeah.
I know it's a loaded question.
No, it kind of depends on the day, too, of just the time of the day with the game. 5 p.m. is different from 7 p.m.
True.
But, it kind of depends. I would say typically for a home game day, if it's standard 7 p.m. game time, I'm heading to skate, so I'll wake up. Sometimes I'll do a devotion, reading something in the morning just to get myself stimulated. I also look over our pregame shows, so I receive the script in the morning, and I'll work on that afterwards, and then head to morning skate, which usually begins standardly around 10:30 in the morning.
Okay.
So usually there by 10:30, just to see what's going on, line combinations, all the things that are taking place, go downstairs, do interviews, and whatever information I have to gather from the players, I do so at that time for the morning skate. And then I head home. I usually finish my notes of whatever I'm working on, finish emails, and then I'll do a quick workout. Sometimes I'll get a nap in after I work out, because naps, typically on game day, I nap as much as I can on game days, even if it's usually 30 minutes, just something quick. And I hop in the shower and get ready. We have a standard call for the broadcast to go over what's going to happen in game, usually around 3 p.m. On game days, if it's for a 7 p.m. puck drop. And then right after the call ends, I'll typically just head to the arena and get to work with stuff there.
I'm so impressed. Of all of that, I am most impressed that you find time to get a workout in. Get it, girl. I need to get my life together, because I'm like, I don't have time to work out, and your life is far more chaotic than mine. So, okay, Meghan, no more excuses in 2025. Get a workout in, even if it's like 30 minutes, right?
I try to fit in like an hour time frame. So it's usually something short, but something I can get done. I have a gym downstairs in my apartment complex. I'll go down to or do something nearby, or run, do whatever I can.
Yeah.
But I typically have more energy when I do work out, which I need for later on that night instead of being more tired. And so it's helpful.
What about, we're going to talk about the road games, but just while we're on the topic, what about when you're on the road? Still, do you try to find that time even at the hotel gym?
It's pretty much the same routine.
Okay.
So for 7 p.m. game, the only difference is that the time's different because you're getting on a bus to go to morning skate and coming back. So I'm typically at skate for longer, just on whatever the bus schedule is. But when I get home, back to the hotel, which is essentially home at this point.
Yeah.
But I get back to the hotel and I change into clothes and go straight to the gym afterwards.
Oh my gosh, I'm impressed. I'm sure you've got it locked in and you are just good to go. And you have to, keeping with that routine is probably so important for your on-camera performance as well. It's just kind of getting in that flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Once you get used to a routine,
routine. That is the key. That is the key. And I know so many of the players stick with their routine as well. But I'm always so impressed just from a journalism standpoint, and having also gotten my degree in broadcast journalism, the questions that you ask these guys, because they're always different. They're always so thought out. Do they just come to you? How do you come up with, and I know they come at different times, during intermissions as well as post game, but where do you get the inspiration to come up with these questions?
It kind of depends, just based on the storyline of the game.
Yeah.
I just take mental notes throughout the period of, all right, obviously the PK is a big storyline tonight. I'm going to ask about this if I'm talking to someone who's on the PK. Typically what happens is we have a group text going on with the PR staff, with people from our broadcast crew, which are in a truck outside of the building, and then myself, who's typically ringside at this point in the game. And so we're in this group chat to where someone from the truck, one of the producers, is like, hey, can we get so-and-so for an interview? That text comes in with maybe 4 to 6 minutes remaining in that period.
Okay.
And it could be a goal scorer. It could be someone who had just, it plays into the storyline of that period where it makes sense to talk to that person.
Right.
And so once I get a confirmation on who I'm going to interview, which is usually, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 4 minutes. Sometimes if someone has to address something in the locker room, I might find out who I'm interviewing as they're walking out. So at that point, you kind of have to adjust on the fly.
Sure.
But it's kind of playing into the storyline. All right, I know this player's on the power play, or I know this person's on the PK, and this is a storyline in the game or something he's been working on that maybe I had a conversation with him that morning at morning skate, and I knew that this was an area of focus, and now it paid off for him in the game. Now we can talk about what we had spoken about this morning. So it all kind of just depends on the scenario.
Do you ever have those guys, and I feel like I know them, but in the locker room that you're like, this is going to be just a funny one? Like, I feel like whenever you interview Orlov, I'm like, oh, bless her. He always, is it like, I don't know if it's like this Russian thing. He always takes his shirt off. I'm like, Orlov, keep your shirt on, boy.
There are certain players you tend to find out what their tendencies are. So I know X, Y, and Z player likes to take off padding in intermission. So as part of his routine, I appreciate that the interview does not disrupt them, which sometimes it can.
Yeah.
So I just try to be cognizant of that, of,
Sure.
hey, we're going to do this one live and it won't be pre-recorded because he likes to take off all of his padding before he comes out to the interview. And there's a couple of players who enjoy that. With Orlov, I know there are certain things with his wardrobe that he likes to tend to before he comes out because it's part of his routine.
Sure.
So I never want the routine disrupted, but it is funny. Like, just certain personalities that fans know as well of players on the team that I always know. I'm like, well, this is going to be a great one. I might be able to touch on this area outside of just the game if it properly feels like it fits because of that person's personality.
Yeah, and I think the other night you asked Brent Burns something about his beard, and it was just I love those wholesome moments. It was so cute. I had to ask that, though, because I know you're not aware of this, but in game during my first intermission, I throw to you. Like, I pretend like I'm actually throwing to you. I'm like, and to Hanna.
And I'm like sprinting up the stairs somewhere at that moment.
And they roll to you, and we get to see in game the interview that you had just done that aired on FanDuel Sports Network. And then after you're done, I'm like, thanks, Hanna. But I always laugh, just based on, because I can only imagine as a reporter, just those humanizing thought, like those things that are like, okay, these guys are going to do what they're going to do. And I'm here, I'm going to ask the question. So it's just so funny. But I also, talking from the locker room to the guys that you're with on camera, Shane, Tripp, Mike, great group of guys. What's it like working with them, and how is your vibe as a team?
I always just describe it as a family. I feel like this is very unique, and I can say the same thing for both organizations that I've covered now. But I would think with the Hurricanes, it's really special because it just feels like a family.
Yeah.
Everything is very tight-knit, and I always say hockey is the ultimate team sport, and it's the same thing that's replicated through the broadcast crew and everything in between, our production crew that maybe people don't see but are definitely part of the family as well, and have a big group chat. And it's on the road. We're going to dinner together. You're doing all of the life things as well, to where it's not just your standard coworker that you might be a few cubicles down, like 9 to 5. You're with these people nonstop every single day throughout the season. I'm like, gosh, I can't remember the day. One day I didn't see you guys. We have so many practices and different things to attend.
Yeah.
And so it's just really special because they're just a big part of your life.
Iced Tea is presented by Lane & Associates Family Dentistry. When you walk into a Lane office, it is warm, it is welcoming, it is stress-free, and it's an environment for the whole family. So visit lanedds.com to find a location near you. Well, I have to say, I know you came in a few years ago now, but I mean, and you and I have talked, and I knew that you were a gem right from the beginning, but every single person in that arena loves you. It's so true. It's so
that's
true.
Super kind. Thank you for saying that.
No, of course. So, we have the home games, but then you're on the road. And so you travel to every home game. Like, are you just exhausted? Like, do you ever get to the point where like, I don't know how I'm going to physically do this?
There are moments where I can kind of tell with myself when I start to feel drained, whether that be socially drained, physically drained. Typically after the long 2-week trips or the 10-day trips are typically the ones where I'm like, all right, I just need a day to just sit and allow myself to be. Because I feel like, and you know, in this industry, it's go, go, go. It's such a fast-paced lifestyle, especially with game days consuming so much of your time, that it's easy for even your off days to feel like you're wasting time if you're not living that fast-paced life.
Yes.
And so I have to actually force myself, just allow myself to just be. You know, you just need a day to recoup so that you can actually do the best job that you can the next day. So I definitely have those moments sporadically throughout the season where I'm like, listen, I just need a day. I got to cut myself off, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, because my social media meter runs so low, like very often when you speak for a living. So you're like, I just literally don't want to talk to anybody. But for you, it's kind of hard because, you know, yes, like you said, you've got to do your dinners and everything. So do you just look forward to unplugging when you're in the hotel room or you're back here in Raleigh at home and you're just like, I don't want to make plans. I don't want to see anybody.
To an extent, it's I love seeing my friends when I come back, but it's just knowing how to plan, and it's just making sure that I don't, you know, overstuff myself with too much to where I just have to acknowledge that, hey, like, we're all humans. Like, we all need some time to recoup at some point. So for me, it's almost hard. I have to really find a balance to where I'm still engaged socially just outside of my job so that my job doesn't just become my lifestyle. Because it's like, yes, this is a priority, but this is not like the identity of who I am.
Right.
And so I have to make sure that I'm still keeping myself involved around people to where, you know, I'm doing things outside of work to where my focus isn't just my job throughout the season, if that makes sense.
Oh, that is so hard, though. I mean, I used to travel for work as well. And I just remember being like, I just need to be. It just, when your meter is low, and then plus you just have to be on and on camera and everything, but props to you because you do it amazingly. The other thing that would stress me out is packing. Like, what? How many suitcases, and is there a list involved? I would definitely forget something.
I am a last minute packer.
No, you're not.
I'm just like, I will pack the night before, the morning of. Sometimes I just like, and at this point, it's probably because I just know what I need.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier for me that way. But I've always been that way. I'm like, well, I'll just pack this to the brim and then everything should be in there. Maybe if I'm caught out for a month, like, I'll be prepared in that situation. But it's funny because everyone gives me trouble. Is like, sometimes the only female on these trips, I tend to have the majority of bags until Brent Burns joined the team, obviously. And so now I never feel bad about overpacking because I always know that he will have more than me. So then it's just, you know, then it's just easy. Not that I felt bad in the first place. I'm like, well, I'm going to have what I need. I got, you know, makeup and curling irons and different things that the guys aren't packing in their bags anyways. But yeah, it obviously gives me a sense of relief with that.
But isn't Brent Burns like the camper? So I picture him being a minimalist, but no, he's got bags on bags.
He is. So he's a minimalist with what he needs in terms of like the type of stuff he utilizes, but he's the epitome of the biggest preparation. Like, you have to have that preparation to last this long in the league at the level that he has, right?
Right.
Like, one of the best to do it. Yes. And so for him to be prepared, he knows what he needs. And that's everything, like from food, from caffeine, like everything that he would need throughout a day. He wants to make sure that he has all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because he's very routine oriented.
I do think there was an interview where he said, I bring my pillow. I bring literally. So that makes a lot of sense. And that's great. Anything that can make you feel comfortable on the road, you do it. Are there any other like quirks or anything that you have to bring with you every single game, whether it be a home game or an away game? Is there anything that you have like tradition wise?
I don't know if it's like to a game. I have my clipboard, obviously, which is my backpack at all times. You guys probably see just like throughout the game. It's just easier for me to do my notes. I would be lost without that thing. It's like I'm very like I need to be organized in that way. I just have a set way of how I enjoy doing it. But in terms of packing, like, not really. I always make sure I have a bag that has emergency, Theraflu, like anything I might need if I start feeling something coming on, just because you're around so many people and it's cold and all of the things. And so I have that one bag that I take on every trip, but that's pretty much it.
I am impressed too with your wardrobe rotation. Like, even me in game, I'm like, okay, what combination can I make now? Like, because I am out of outfits. How do you do that?
My key is just wear black every day.
I love
and
it.
then it's, people don't know if you're repeating or if you're not. Black is just a staple in my wardrobe and my life, and that's what it is.
And we love a good black. Like, honestly, I'm here for it too. I remember you came home from a game. You were like on the road for a long time. I think it was probably when the fair was in town. And bless your friends that you have made moving here, because you put a post on your social media, like you walked into your apartment and they had gotten you groceries and all these things. And I told you, I DM'd you, I was like, not me screenshotting literally everything you eat and use, because I was like, I want to look like Hannah. I was like, okay, this is what we got. But talk to me about moving here and settling in and finding your home. So it seems like it's been good, but
it's been amazing.
I'm sure it was hard.
Yeah, I love it. I consider this home at this point. It's been great. And so I grew up in St. Louis. I went off to school. I studied journalism at the University of Missouri. And then my first job offer was back in St. Louis. I had looked at areas outside of St. Louis as well, but the best opportunity for me at that time was actually in radio. That's how I got my start in St. Louis.
Wow.
Yeah, on a radio show. So I did radio for about 2 years.
Was it sports radio?
It was sports radio.
Okay.
Yes. And one of the shows that I was on was primarily hockey, which is where I felt like I had really learned just, the niche that I wanted to pursue. I'm like, I just feel like this is a cool calling that I had felt at the time before I had pursued local sports, which was at an NBC affiliate afterwards. And so I'd only lived in St. Louis, and that's where my family was. And we have a very tight-knit family, so it made sense to go back home, save up some money, do things right when I had graduated initially. And then my family are now permanently down in Florida.
Oh, they are?
Yes,
okay,
so
not
they
in
moved
St.
down
Louis
to
anymore.
the Panhandle, but they were still in St. Louis when I made the choice to move across the country to Raleigh, which was a tough thing, but I just felt like it was a way in my faith, like God challenging me to, hey, take this leap of faith, like trust this process. Let's go out here and just see what we have in store. And so it was a really neat thing, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life coming here, which has been a fantastic community. I did not know a single person when I moved out here. And so for me, it's, okay, what am I going to do? I have, at this point, 2 weeks maybe before the season starts. I can't remember the exact timetable, but it was pretty short and brief to where I can get connected a little bit. And so luckily my cousin had a connection to someone at a church here, and I went to a Bible study my first week here and met those girls who were in that Instagram post. So they immediately became my first friends here, and now lifelong friends that I'll have forever. And it's been the best support system I could ask for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It warmed my heart when I saw that, because I know those moments and I know how important it is to basically pick your family, like when it's not your family, when you've got to move somewhere where you don't know anybody, and it's so scary. And I had a similar journey and same sort of thing. And it means the world when someone takes you under their wing and they kind of show you the ropes. So that is awesome. But so that's so crazy. So when you go home now, is that hurt a little that it's not St. Louis?
I don't know, because I just feel like home is what you make it. I feel like every time we go back to St. Louis, whether it be for the Hurricanes or the Braves or whatever it might be, or just going to see friends for weddings and different things, like geographically, it will always feel like home, because these are the place that I made so many memories with people growing up. And it's that sense of familiarity that I love. And I love, the sporting teams, everything growing up there that, makes you part of who you are.
Yeah.
And so it'll always be part of your home, but it's also family is where my home is, right? Or people or whatever it might be. And so you kind of get this this new idea of the concept of what home even means.
Yeah.
And so it's always special when I go back, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's different that I don't have a physical house to go to when I go home, but it's nice to go and just see my family too.
Oh my goodness. And I guess Florida is a little bit closer, it's a little bit more of a hop, skip, and a jump, I guess, than St. Louis. But I guess it just depends.
Yeah.
You could drive or fly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you have a great relationship with your dad, because again, your posts, social media, he's always watching, like no matter where he is, even if he's at work. And I love that, because my parents are the same way. But was there a full circle moment that I remember reading? Like, wasn't there something that happened with the Hurricanes a long time ago, and then it's kind of full circle that you are now a part of the team?
So my first hockey game that I had went to was with him.
Okay.
And at the time, I lived in St. Louis, so we went to the Blues game, and the Blues were playing the Hurricanes. And so I had that ticket stub in my nightstand when I was like packing up to move. And so I'm cleaning out like things that I've had for decades in this nightstand at this point. And I'm like, gosh, I don't know what to do with this. I guess go into Goodwill or like whatever. I can't take all of this to Raleigh. And so it was just like old things that I had kept. And so I had that ticket stub and I'm like, gosh, I didn't remember either because it had been so long ago. It was years and years and I must have saved it just because what I did with my dad growing up, like sports were a big part of my upbringing and things that we would do together for father-daughter dates. We'd always pick games out or travel to college football games, different things that we did together for bonding moments. And so that was one of them. My first hockey game was with him and they were playing the Carolina Hurricanes. So it was really special.
That is so cute. And I love that. It's like those moments where you're like, I'm on the right path. This is the right
Just
thing.
A little subtle reminder.
Just little reminders. Right? Now, I was looking at your LinkedIn. Were you also the in-arena host for the St. Louis Blues for a time?
I did. So when I did radio prior to going to the NBC affiliate, so that was quite a few years back at this point, but my radio co-host for the show, he was technically the host of the show, Cam Jansen, who's a former Blues player. And so they had asked both of us to come, hey, could you fill in? And it's kind of interesting. It's almost what Shane Willis and I do now at intermission at the desk.
Yeah.
But we did that on the Jumbotron for just a couple of games throughout the season. So it wasn't a full-time position by any means. But I had done that with him and a few others who had also played for the organization previously. And so it was good practice and experience of knowing, that I really enjoyed doing that.
Oh, that is cool. Because I saw that too. I was like, oh, my girl is like doing what I did. Okay, that's really fun. That's really fun. The other thing that impresses me about you is it's one thing to get one sport down and be, super knowledgeable about it. Now, let's add on Major League Baseball. So in the off season, you on FanDuel Sports Network now were reporting for the Atlanta Braves. Tell me about that because it looked like a blast.
It was a ton of fun. It was essentially exactly what I do with the Hurricanes, only from a reporting perspective. And so I did all of the in-game reporting for the Braves this summer. I moved to Atlanta. So I moved there right after the Canes season ended and lived there until right before the Canes season started this season. And so it was another opportunity to explore another city. And at this point, I was like kind of used to the move and knowing what I needed to do to navigate a new city and get connected and whatnot. But thrown right into that again, with it starting pretty quickly right after hockey season ended. But I loved it. It was neat. I did around 75 games. I traveled with the team the same way that I do with the Hurricanes. And so it was cool seeing completely different cities that hockey markets aren't in, but it's a baseball market. Some West Coast cities that don't carry NHL teams. And so it was really neat. I loved the experience, learned a lot, felt like I grew more professionally just with the experience. And I had a great time. It's a really, really fantastic organization. It reminded me of the Hurricanes in many ways, just with the leadership, manager, Rod Brind'Amour is the coach. Like there's just a lot of similarities in the morals and the types of people who were involved with the organization. The players were also great to work with. The staff, broadcast wise, felt like a family. And so it was just really good experience.
Now, did you know just as much about baseball as you did about hockey going into it?
Yeah, like I had grown up. Soccer was the main sport that I played personally growing up, did competitive soccer, all of the things with that. But I had played like every sport growing up at least once, like softball, basketball, volleyball. Didn't play hockey, didn't play football. But I had grown up playing sports. And so I felt like I had knowledge of that. My dad, he played baseball at Mizzou. And then he tried to get into he had a minor league tryout, but he had never made it to play at that level. And so baseball was his first love with sports. So that's what we did growing up. We went to a ton of St. Louis Cardinals games. My brother played baseball. My dad coached him. I was just around the sport a lot. And so it's always been a sport that I loved. Just in our household, it was always on. I was always watching it. So I had familiarity with it from that.
Oh my God. I just watching you do it, I'm like, I don't even think. When I first got the job with the Canes, I knew nothing about hockey. But I also thought my job was mainly going to be interacting with fans. So I was like, oh, okay. And then they're like, no, you're kind of like reporting in game. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, this is going to be interesting. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay. And also, I do also have to commend your on-air team, because I've learned a lot from y'all watching away games and listening to your questions and the way you ask things and the way you word things. It's gotten my writing, because I write my own scripts too, a lot easier just from learning from you guys. So thank you for that.
I'm glad to hear that.
But I couldn't even imagine having to, do both sports and names and all that stuff. That just seems really, but amazing that you can do it. And that's why you're exactly the professional that you are. But because you have worked for now a couple different organizations, what makes the Carolina Hurricanes now that you've kind of seen a lot of it?
I think there's a couple of components that stand out the most. Hockey, to me, because it's such a team sport atmosphere, there's just a different feel about it. And it's not like better or worse than other sports. It's really unique and it's really special. And to me, I love that, where it's just very tight knit. It just feels like a unit working together. And as you say, even in the locker room, it's just very close group. Even how you're sitting in proximity, you're around these people just in a very intimate space all the time.
Yeah.
And I think from a team vibe, it's really important because you need all of the pieces working together. And I think it starts with leadership, whether that be ownership, general manager. There's just really good people in this organization.
That's amazing.
And I haven't been in an organization or been a part of one where that hasn't been the case, but I've also only been, covering the Braves and the Hurricanes in that setting to be able to see it firsthand. Rod Brind'Amour is so unique with his coaching style, and there's just so many different components. I just remember my first week here, the way that I felt like I was taken in immediately, even as someone who works for a broadcast network instead of, the actual team, and to feel like I was a part of that as well, because they understand the importance of everyone's purpose and their job of what they're trying to do there. And so I just feel like it's very unique, but all of the players are great people as well. It's very easy to where there's that respect factor. And I think it starts with Rod Brind'Amour laying that foundation. And something that he said, even in the past couple of weeks, that really stood out. He said, listen, when I took over this organization, my goal was to fill a room of people whose morals all aligned with the same purpose in life, and that carries over to the sport. So the sport is never the sole purpose of your identity at all. It's things off of the ice that carries on, and that trickles through every employee in the organization to the broadcast crew, and it takes all of these people to work together. And I just feel like it's a very unique setting with the Hurricanes.
Wow. So I also know this industry in general, no matter who you are, is not easy, but especially being a woman on the sidelines. So if anything, what has this industry taught you, and specifically coming from a woman's perspective?
It's a loaded question because I think there's a lot of ways to go with it. For me, and especially when I'm always talking to younger girls, and the questions I would ask women, as I was coming into the industry, which I'm constantly learning from them still at this point in my career. But I think it's who you are, and there's a separating factor for me. When I came into this industry, I was so gung-ho on, I want to do this, this, and this, and I have all these goals and aspirations. And then you lose sight of being content, in life, because you're prioritizing your job as your identity. And so for me, a big part of my career, in my life as well, was just separating the two of this is not who I am. And so remembering who you are and sticking to that and just letting that guide you to where your career is just something that, you're lucky enough to do. You're blessed to have the opportunity to do it, but it does not define who you are. And so for me, I had to really remember that, because there's a lot of failures and setbacks that you experience in this job. As everyone will know, I was you're rejected 5 million times before you have the one person that says yes to where you get the job. And as a result, it can affect you mentally, of your belief in yourself and your purpose of, for me, it was is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is there purpose to this? And so I had to really separate the two. And I felt like that changed the entire trajectory of my career, because I was no longer just doing it thinking that this is who I was. It's just, this is something that I enjoy to do, if that makes sense.
I've always wanted to sit down and talk to you and get to know you. But to be honest with you, I literally feel like the words you just spoke are directed, at so many that are listening, but at me, because I don't know how to separate the two. am my career, and I don't want to be, because it makes everything so muddied in life, because you just have this, my constant thinking is, what's next? You're like never content, because you're chasing the next thing and you're chasing the next thing. So how did you learn to separate the two and be satisfied with it just being like, this is my career, but like I'm more satisfied with who Hanna Yates is, and I can be satisfied with who Meghan Lamontagne is?
Yeah, I would say the moment that I really felt it happened definitely in St. Louis. And so there was just a lot of failure to where I was like, you know what, maybe I'm not called to do this. I'm just not getting these opportunities. I feel like I'm fit for this position. It's just not working out. What's supposed to be happening? And so I had to really turn to my faith, and it was really testing, because I felt like I grew up, and I was like, oh, I believe in God. And I know that I did, but I was not walking and actually rooted the way that like would help me withstand all of the storms. And so when I was in St. Louis and I was offered to stay, and, I was like, I think I might step away from this. And I had started applying for jobs outside of broadcast.
Oh, wow.
And I was ready to walk away from broadcast. I was like, I feel like I have passion for so many other things and other industries that I felt like I could be utilized. And I'm like, you know what, if this is what I'm called to do, I'm going to walk away. And I've reached the point where I know that my purpose is not this job, right? And so I had just fully surrendered in that aspect of my life. And I was just, I was applying for other interests that I had for a long time. And that's when I got a call 2 weeks after I had turned down the opportunity to stay in St. Louis for this one in North Carolina. And I was like, well, this is not how I anticipated. I had been open and actively looking, like in the sense that I was willing to go where I was called, but I did not know that this was an opportunity. I had not, pursued this head on. I had gotten a call from an agent I was working with at the time that was like, hey, would this be of interest? I'm like, yes, that had always been a dream of mine, to cover hockey full time. What's the worst case scenario? I do an interview and turn down. I've experienced that before. I'm already applying to jobs outside of the realm of broadcast. I'm ready to step away if I feel called. And I felt like because I had surrendered all of my wants and desires, God was like, all right, I feel like you're ready for this next jump. That's how I interpreted it at the time.
Yes.
To where this is what you need to get out of your comfort zone of the place you've grown up forever and move across the country and trust me in this process.
Yeah.
And now it's just been this, beautiful thing that I never expected.
The fact that, because I know the countless online searches, typing in reporter, host, like what's open. And the fact that this one of all, you drew it because of all your hard work, but the call came to you, like that is the sign. Like that is speaking to you. Like that's how you knew, like, oh my gosh, no. I have goosebumps, girl.
I didn't know I was going to get the position by any means. I did not have high hopes getting into the situation. I'm like, gosh, there has to be, a lot of candidates who are probably closer or who have, more hockey experience. At that time, I was doing everything I could in St. Louis to cover the sport, to get the repetition that I could, to build up a reel and resume, to be qualified the best that I could with the experience at a station. But yeah, it just worked out. It happened relatively quickly. Because it wasn't, it was during the summer, right before the season was starting. And so the whole process was really quick. Expedited from there. And so, it just was, total God thing.
And so did you, like how long was it was quick, but was the process like you flew here, you had a couple interviews, and then
I never came.
Oh my gosh.
I never came. Gosh. I never came in person. So I had just done Zoom interviews.
Okay.
And they had my work.
It was still around COVID time too. So I'm sure it was.
I didn't know if I would be flown out. I think because they were having to make the hire in such an expedited time process. It was just, they had sample size of my work. So it was extensive Zoom interviews, multiple of them.
Sure.
To where they could, get a test of my understanding of the sport and all of the things that they felt they needed for the position.
Yeah.
And had seen examples of my work, in expedited lengths to where, I had never come out here. So I didn't meet people before I had accepted the position to come out. So it was a total leap of faith.
Yes.
But the one funny story is that, or very early on in my career when I had first graduated from college, and my dad was so influential in trying to get me to know the right. He's like, networking's a big part of this. I have friends who might have connections. Why don't you just meet people in the industry and they can give you advice on how they got started? And so anytime I'd go on trips, we'd go to a football game and it would be, we travel to a Mizzou football game or somewhere every year. One year he had a work trip in Raleigh and it was right after I graduated college. And so my schedule was flexible. And when I was in radio at the time, and he's like, I'm going to Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a really good friend there and he knows some people in the organization. Why don't you just come and look around the hockey rink? I know this is something you want to do, to see if someone in the organization can talk to you and just give you insight on how to break in. And so we show up and it was Don Waddell, who I had no familiarity with at that point in time. And he, as the general manager, was willing to walk me around the arena, take me downstairs, show me the locker room, and sit with me in the stands and ask me what my goals are. And I'm this 22-year-old girl fresh out of college with no experience or resume, to where he did not need to take. And it was out of respect for the man that he knew, obviously, who was involved with the organization. I'm sure he was doing it out of favor at that point in time to him. But regardless, with the schedule he had, it meant the world to me. It really made an impact. And so that was the only hockey team I'd ever, walked around the arena before or seen anything outside of St. Louis when I had gotten the job. But just in terms of when I was exploring opportunities, that stuck with me. And I'm like, gosh, that organization felt really special. And then when I got the call that this was the team to where there was an opening, it just was like there were so many little signs. And when I had accepted the position, I retold that story to Don. He's like, that was you? He had to remember it was so many years prior to that afterwards.
I was literally going to say that. I wasn't sure if you were allowed to tell me who you interviewed with, but I was going to ask you if one of them was Don. Is Don not the sweetest man? And the fact that, I know that this is going to air whenever it's going to air, but did you get a chance to see him last night?
I didn't have the chance to see him in Raleigh, but when the team went and played in Columbus, I don't even know what was that, 2 weeks ago at this point, whenever the first game that they faced off this season, I ran into him in the hallway and he's so kind. I think the world of him, the world of Eric Tolsky now as well.
Yes.
But Don just, to think back on that time and his willingness, and then to come here and have a full circle moment, and then to be able to work with him professionally was just really special. Yeah, he made a massive impact on my
gosh.
career.
And then that you brought it up in your interview and he was like, that was
And he didn't interview me. It was actually the interview. It was the season opener of my first ever game that I worked. We always had him on as a guest.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was up in the booth with Mike and I was downstairs outside at the desk with Shane. And I was like, we're going to send it upstairs. But I told the story on air and I think he was caught off guard. He's like, I had no, he did not remember that it was the same, because it was so many years ago at that point. I wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
But it was really special.
Oh, that's amazing. Just to wrap it all up and put a nice bow on it.
Right.
Oh, girl, amazing. Well, we are certainly glad that you are here. And now for the last segment, don't sweat because it's not that hard, but it's called Spill the Tea.
Oh, boy.
Everyone always gets nervous, but don't worry, it's not. Okay, so it's just a fun little rapid fire, just kind of, just some things that we're interested in. Okay, so when you're on the plane of Mike, Trip, you, who falls asleep the fastest, if you can even sleep?
Me. I have this coat, which Mike may have, if it was ever discussed on the plane, it would have been brought up, but I have the black coat that I have right here in front of us that has a fur-lined hood.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of cushion in it, so I always keep the hood on. Not that I need the hood, I'm out walking through the brisk cold all the time, but it serves as a pillow that I will use on the flight, and I can sleep no matter what. I can be asleep on the tarmac before we take off. It just doesn't matter. I will sleep on flights.
I love that.
Prioritize rest. I know some of that. Sometimes I see Mike fall asleep. Trip typically doesn't sleep a lot.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on our crew. One of our producers, Jamelia, he'll fall asleep. He brings his wife's eye mask, which I'm sure he loves sharing this on the podcast. But it's just funny. We all have
do what you have to do.
We got to find rest where we can.
Good. I'm glad you find your rest, girl. And yes, that jacket is goals and very comfy. I've always wanted to, I was wondering this, when you interview the guys at the end of a game, you've been witness to many amazing moments, a lot of firsts for them. Have you ever felt like a proud mama in a particular, one particular moment that rings out to you?
I do. Gosh, I'm trying to think if there's one moment. Even, I don't know when this will air, but I had recently, just talking to Sebastian Aho with the milestones that he hits, you can see the emotion in the answers. The same with Jordan Marnick. A lot of these players just having the chance to share the milestones, whether it be the number of games that they play or passing so-and-so in the leaderboards of history. It's really special. I get emotional. I don't know if it comes through the questions sometimes, but I'm definitely feeling it as I'm listening to their answers and also trying to prep for the next one. But those are my favorite kind of interviews. Even with Seth Jarvis, I would say that was one of my favorite moments was when he made the Four Nations team for Team Canada. And he was going to be in this tournament in this coming February. And the emotion that he displayed and the willingness that he was able to share publicly, it touched me a lot. And just to see the paths that people have taken to get to this point. And that's the whole point of this job, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I always say is it's the storytelling factor, being able to share other people's stories, knowing that it's going to impact people who are watching is the best part of the job.
Yeah.
And so just being able to sit there and have those conversations and see the way that they're impacted is really special.
That was a really touching interview. I remember that because he brought up his family and the first phone call to his mom. But that says a lot about you too, because, as an interviewer, they have to trust you with those stories. And you've made an impact with them because they trust you to tell those stories. So that must mean a lot too.
It does. It means a lot that they're willing to share it with me. And I think a lot of that is just knowing that they're human and that they've walked through trials and tribulations just like every other person. And so being respectful of those journeys and just pointing out like, hey, this is why you're here. The whole purpose is to share these stories with people. It's not about the numbers of goals you score, which is huge. It's so important in the game. But it's all those stories behind the scenes of how you got here that are the most special. And so, I'm super appreciative when they share.
Oh, I love it. Of the families on the Canes, who seems like that they'd be the most fun, like to hang out with or like would throw a good holiday bash?
Gosh, I love everyone on this team. It's been such a group to be around. Like all of the wives are great as well. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I know that the Slavens sometimes host game nights from what I hear,
that's fun.
Which sounds like a great time. I feel like just the Burns household overall, they've hosted Thanksgiving for the team. They've hosted, just a lot of different factors of like just taking people in. I hear stories from Seth Jarvis on having dinner at the Burns household. They've just adopted him in as one of their own. And the stories that come out are great because I know that Brent Burns is very much into his Traeger and all of the things that go into that. So I just feel like the personalities, it would be a great time. His wife, Susan, is fantastic.
Oh, I love that.
And so I feel like they would just make it very homey, fun experience for anyone involved.
For sure. I would have said the same people because that's the energy I feel too. And then I might have asked you this already, but we'll just close out with this. Is there like a little trinket or something that you have at every game that's like, I need to have this with me or somewhere around me at every game?
My clipboard. My clipboard, I will die on that hill, is like the most important thing to my career right now. It is like, I had the same one for 2 seasons. It was like ripping. I was like, the time has come. It was hard for me to part ways with my first clipboard. I was like, and it wasn't special. Like I ordered it off Amazon or from Target. And so then I got a new one this season. And it was like, when it came in, I was so excited about this black leather clipboard. It was like $15. And I showed everyone at the rink. I was like, look what I got. And Shane's like, it's clipboard. I'm like, it's not just any clipboard. It is a black leather clipboard with a pocket inside. Like it holds all of my things.
I mean,
I was very excited about it.
Listen, it's
the little things in life.
The little things. And I love that because I understand a good clipboard. I will have to say my clipboard is not as cool as that one. I feel like I need to look at that one that you have.
I can send you the link.
I thank you. But what I do love about my clipboard is it's the clipboard, normal on the top, but then it's got you can pop it open and it's got an inside.
That's nice.
So I have like my little lip gloss in there.
You have all of your things.
I've got all of my things.
Yeah.
Who needs a
my
purse?
pen holder, my mic, I can just set on the clipboard. It'll balance, then I'm not dropping it. It's just all of my notes. I can coordinate them. Need my clipboard.
Yep. Say goodbye to backpacks. We don't need them.
No.
Girls like us, we just need a clipboard.
Just the clipboard. I will die on that hill.
And Hannah, with that, thank you for joining me. And cheers. You are such a gem. And
this is a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. I love this little host.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Iced Tea. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you share with a friend or family member. And don't forget, let's go Canes. A big thanks to Lane & Associates Family Dentistry, our presenting sponsor for Iced Tea.